Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming to the Less is More Coaching Podcast and Videocast. Thank you. So excited to get going today with the second day of talking about positive personality profiles and the DISC assessment. Yesterday, we got started with it and talking a little bit about the total picture of outgoing and task, outgoing and people, reserved and task, and reserved and people, the DISC. And I'm super excited to get started again this afternoon. And, Dr. Robert Rohn starts off with, in his book here, getting into the second part of it. We talked a little bit about the total picture, and I just want to welcome Daryl to the stage on Clubhouse. How you doing, Daryl?
I am absolutely amazing, Coach Les, and thank you for having me.
You are very welcome, Daryl. Thanks for being here. And I just want to get started with moving into sharing a little bit, and can't wait to do a little bit more summarizing from chapter 1 in the book on positive personality profiles, and then hear what people have to say. And this, to me, has been one of the most powerful things that I've added to my bucket as a coach. And I'm a little bit humbled to say that I've been a certified DISC profile, positive personality profiler for 3 years. And I just started putting it into my business in the last 3 months. And I'm looking at it now going, well, I guess better late than never. And I've been absolutely blown away by the difference that it's made in my business, in looking at why people do some of the things they do and how they do them. And this amazing test, which takes about 20 to 25 minutes to complete, has you choose between certain different answers. And at the end of it, when you start to look and see, yesterday we talked about whether you're outgoing or reserved, and asked the people, and then looked at, well, are you task oriented or are you people oriented? And that puts you into one of these buckets. And then all of us have a little bit of personality profile in each of the different buckets, but it was so amazing to see the dominant, very simple people saying, yep, that's me, that's me, that's me. And then poof, they're into a quadrant. So jumping in here, the total picture. By now you've probably thought, I feel like I have some of all of these traits. I have some DISC in me, if you're listening. Well, exactly. Everybody is a blend of these 4 traits. Each of us is wired differently. Some traits are more dominant in us than others. Research shows that in about 80% of the general population, people have at least 2 areas that tend to be predominant in their personality style, while the other 2 areas are less predominant. In other words, it is rare to find a person who is 100% or purely a D, outgoing and task driven, or outgoing and people driven, or reserved and people oriented, or just reserve and task. Usually we're a blend of at least 2 of these traits. However, one of these traits may be so prevalent that it is predominant in a person's life. Other personality aspects will still be present, only to a much lesser degree of intensity. Now, when we look at what do you call it, this personality stuff, Dr. Robert Rohn says, well, by now you may be thinking, I've heard of some of this personality stuff before. I just can't remember what it's called. That may be because the old Greek titles used long ago have no hooks to them. They are difficult to remember, and they are at least 2,000 years old. Most people struggle with remembering these personality types, recognized and named by Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, as early as 400 BC. Hippocrates theorized that temperament types resulted from the 4 bodily fluids that are predominant in one's body. 1, yellow bile, 2, blood, 3, phlegm, and 4, black bile. So he derived his names of the 4 temperaments from the names of the 4 bodily fluids, or liquids he thought were their primary cause. Yellow bile, the active type, choleric; blood, the lively type, sanguine; phlegm, the slow type, phlegmatic; black bile, the dark type, melancholy. The words choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic, and melancholy are not only difficult to pronounce because they're not part of our daily vocabulary, but we also have no frame of reference to help us in categorizing those terms. Using the old Greek terms can be very confusing. For example, when I was on a radio talk show in New York City, the gentleman interviewing me asked me to explain the choleric personality, like a shirt collar. My mind went totally blank. I had no idea what he was talking about. I did not realize he had simply mispronounced choleric. There were only 2 words that came to mind. The first was colicky, and I thought to myself, isn't that what small babies get when they get an upset stomach? And the other word was cholera, and I knew that was a disease. Only a few seconds went by, but it seemed like an eternity. Finally, I replied, oh, you're talking about the choleric personality type. Using the preferred pronunciation, he laughed and said, yeah, that's what I meant. My point here is that most people do not use the ancient Greek terms for the model of human behavior because they're hard to remember, have no accompanying hook, and are very difficult to pronounce. For those who are familiar with the words, the disc pattern follows in this order. D, or dominant type, is equivalent to the old Greek choleric temperament. I, or inspiring type, is the old Greek sanguine temperament. S is, or supportive type, is the old Greek phlegmatic temperament. And C, or cautious, competent type, is the old Greek melancholy temperament. Even though the idea that bodily fluids determine one's personality has long been since discarded, the 4-fold classification of temperaments is still widely used. It was not until recent days that a modern classification of temperaments had been arranged. The DISC system is one of those methods. 9 commonly used classification models are reproduced in the appendix in the back of this book, by the way. As we proceed, we'll show you how it's better to have the hook of DISC in one's mind rather than the old Greek titles. So it really is one of those things for me, as we get into this. You know, what are the 2 qualities that characterize the D-type personality? Outgoing and task-oriented. Give 1 word that characterizes the D-type personality, and that's dominant. What is the characterizing symbol for the D-type personality? If you can think about it, it would be an exclamation point. What 2 qualities characterize the I-type personality? Outgoing and people-oriented. And give 1 word that characterizes the I-type: inspiring. And what symbol, 1 characterizing symbol for the I-type personality, is a star. Now we go to what 2 qualities characterize the S-type personality: is reserved and people-oriented. And what is the give one S word that characterizes the S-type personality, and we're looking at supportive. And then what's the characterizing symbol for the S-type personality? Of course, that's the plus and minus sign. What are the two qualities now that characterize the C-type personality? Is reserve and task-oriented. What's the one word that characterizes the C-type personality? And that's cautious. And what's the characterizing symbol for C-type personality? That's the question mark. And as we go into this, one of the things that I want to check in again, since I see there's a couple people here. Welcome, Joey. Come on up. And Paitlin, great to see you. Dominique, come on up. Hi, Paitlin.
Hello. It's been pretty interesting about the different personality traits and stuff, the classifications.
It is, and it's so interesting how we fit into this, and it is so classic. I've done this test now to about 50 people, and it really has become fun to watch people discover some of the reasons why they get irritated by people in their life. And I think it's has become one of those things for me now. As I see people and as I meet people, I'm starting to see them in these personality profiles, and without even having to ask or test based on their bodily actions, how they communicate. Because remember, 85 to 95% of our communication is nonverbal. So it is really important to pay attention. Some of those, and nonverbal, by the way, doesn't just mean sight. It means listening. It means sensory, as in feeling the speed and tempo, and breathing. All of those things move in to the category and have that space inside of, is this person outgoing or reserved? Are they task-oriented or are they people-oriented? And as we continue to look at this, I'm going to spend just a minute on the D-type personality. And I'm going to leave you with those of you that are here today and those of you watching. I'm going to leave you kind of with a question mark as to who are some of the people that you may know in this specific personality. And when we come back next week on Monday and Tuesday, one of the things that we're going to look at is how does knowing some of this information, how is it going to make a difference in how we work or how we work with someone? And as we go through this over the next couple of weeks and we discern the different types and some of the ways in which to deliver information or request information from each of the personality types. And that's my goal to support everybody with, is to be able to leave each person that comes in with a nugget to support them in either their sales or their personal life. Because one of the things that, if you know me, we've been selling since we were babies. We sold our mother on the fact that we were hungry, or we sold our mother the fact that we were cold or hot. And the way we did it was in crying. So let me just run through some of the things about a D personality and leave this with you. A D-type personality, remember when we talked about it and we shared what are the key things about that, and the one characteristic I said was dominant. Here are some of the other words that represent somebody that is a D. Direct, demanding, decisive, determined, the doers. And then one of the cool things about the D's, which some of you may go, well, that's not very cool, is the Achilles heel, is they are defiant. And what is interesting about their defiance is their defiance has a plus side and a minus side. The plus side is they're defiant about whether or not some people go, you're not going to succeed. And they get defiant about it and they strive through and bust through. And the other part is that it's often that they're sometimes not as coachable as some of the other personality profile types. So remember, as a D-type personality, they like to win. They like to plan for the future. They like new ideas. They like results. And they like to be their own boss. They like to move fast. And they like a challenge. Now, if you have kids that are D's, here's one of the things that this is a kind of a fun little nugget to be looking for. D's always, as children, fight. They don't want to go to bed. They want to fight. They don't want to go to bed. And one of the key things as a coach that I shared with people is parents. Here's the secret ingredient. When the kids say, I don't want to go to bed, I'm not tired, is to look at them and with a smile and say, I know you're not tired. Here's the thing. We're tired and we're ready to have some alone time. So it's time for you to go to bed so we can be alone and you can read in your room and you can relax and we can have some quality time together. And it's such a shock that it allows them and allows you an opportunity to catch them and have fun with them. So the other secret tip about a D is before you can be in authority as a D, you must first learn to be under authority. Now, what does that look like? That looks like finding a mentor. That looks like finding somebody that you can look up to and be responsible for. Now, as I said before, the symbol that characterizes a D is an exclamation point. Now, in the world, out of 100% of the population, only 10% of the population are Ds. And you might ask yourself, why is that? And the prevailing joke about that is because God is merciful to only be able to handle 10% of the population as a D-type personality. They're very results driven, and the rest of the world supports them in the result of creating whatever it is they're up to creating. As we said before, I is the inspiring, S is the supportive, and C is the cautious. And what I'd love to do now is just check in with the people that are up on stage to hear what they've gotten out of today's podcast in sharing about personality profile, the positive personality profiles, and starting off with the Ds today. So with that, I'm going to go to Clubhouse and just ask the people that came up on stage today for a little feedback. And then we'll close with a little bit of homework and look forward to being with you next Monday. So with that, Paidlin, how are you?
I'm doing great. I can see a little bit of the D personality in myself, although the Lord's working on me. But I can say, just being honest, that and about that authority, I do recommend that. About that's why I like coming to this group, because it helps me to be accountable, and not only that, I get to talk with my pastors as well, and that helps me to be accountable. And so it's beautiful. And thank you, Lord, that He has helped me to get away from that stubborn side of the D personality.
The defiant, yes. That's great, Paitlin. Thank you so much. Brother Wade. Brother Wade, there you go.
No, I'm here. I'm just busy filming Egret. So, I still, I have a lot more to learn about dealing with the different in relationships with dealing with different personality styles. I go back and forth. I can either show up as a D depending on the situation, but my more prevalent when I'm just kind of really in myself is the one that loves to have fun. If I can make it fun, if I can hang out with people, that's why I'm a storyteller. If I can make it fun, I can work and get anything accomplished the moment it requires a mess of detail, discipline, and I like what Padlin said. I have to be careful that the defiant part of me doesn't show up. Especially early on in my childhood, I had a lot of challenges. I related a lot with an old saying, or there's even a song, I think. I was a rebel and I didn't need a cause. I was a rebel without a cause. Sometimes just telling me no was just enough to perhaps send me into outer space. The point I really want to get at is it is important. It's important when we're hiring people. It's important when we're trying to work with our families to try to understand them and understand ourselves so we can be effective communicators and leaders. And I am glad we're doing these things. Thank you, Coach Les. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Wade, and I'm curious to hear everybody else's responses to the room today. Thank you.
Awesome, Wade. Thank you so much. And Brother Joey. Joey, are you able to come off mute?
Coach, I just got to my hotel room. I missed about the last 10 minutes of the conversation.
All right, no worries. Look forward to hearing what you think of it at the end there, sir. Let us know. All right, Robert, we've got about 4 minutes and then I'll be closing down. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, because I know you've been listening since the beginning. So what are your thoughts on this D personality? All right, Robert, you're still on mute. Oh, there we go.
Hey, Coach, it's Rob. Hey, I didn't hear a thing you said, but I just got transferred in here from LinkedIn.
All right. Well, I just was checking in to see what you thought of today's show and what you thought of the D-type personality.
Didn't you say D was the excessive or
the dominant?
I don't know anything about that. I'm kind of afraid of people, but I don't know. You know what? That gets back to the way of teaching. Didn't you say that we do teach with force, or there's two ways there's two words you use. I want to keep your words in play. What are those words? I'll just ask you.
The way that we teach.
Yeah, we teach by force or by.
Either power or force.
Yeah, exactly. So
right.
That to me, a D-type personality, the way you explained it when I was on LinkedIn. I mean, you got to be really, really careful if you're a D-type personality that people don't always look at you as force, because if you do come across as force, it's very, 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 very hard to win friends and influence people when you're in that mode. Some people are just wired that way, and that's okay. But you know, force is a very valuable skill when used appropriately. I think power, just by being who you are and by your sense of, opening your mouth and talking, people either believe you have power or you don't. I mean, you don't demand power, you earn it, right? Wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Yeah, so and I think
everybody. That's what I think. So when I heard you talk about the different levels, that's what immediately went to me, was discussing that. Is because I could easily be categorized as a D, but with power or with love, you know what I mean? You got to be really careful on that. So it got me thinking.
Well, I appreciate that. And there's, one of the things in doing this work, right? Yes, we're going to put people into a bucket, and we're going to create this. And as you look at this, and if you go ahead and you go to my website and you look at the DISC profile and you take the test and you put yourself in and you go, okay, this is the way I currently am. Do not be constrained in that moment, and use it as a starting bridge. And I want to support the end.
That's it, right? That's the key right there. And so use it as the basis of understanding of where you're at. And that doesn't mean where you're always going to be or that you are categorized, because benchmarking yourself is good. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Putting yourself in a category of I am A, B, C, or D. I don't think there's a problem with that. However, using that and leaning on that and being in that position with everybody all the time the exact same way, and not and polarizing yourself, I think that's extremely dangerous, Coach. What do you think about that?
I do, and ebb and flow. Yep. And as we continue this, because we're going to be wrapping up the show here in about 1 minute, okay. And just want to leave people with the knowledge that yes, this categorizes you, but what it also does, though, is it sets us and prepares us to be able to look at how do we grow. And as we spend the next few weeks looking at the D personality, the I personality, the S personality, and the C, and how they can come together and how we can work together, one of the things that we're also going to be looking at is how do we temper ourselves? How do we work with people? How do we bring our faith, family, and business into alignment using this type of personality profile, where we're looking at some of the strong characteristics that we may have? And a lot of times some people for instance, may fall into a supportive role, and the next thing you know, they have a breakthrough. They start a business, and they start a business. For instance, one of the newest types of businesses out there is virtual assistants, and they create an empire of virtual assistants. And how did they get started? They were an assistant. So now all of a sudden, this S-type personality has now developed, grown, and expanded their D and dominant side of their personality and brought the levels up. And that's what I want to leave you with today. I want to leave you with looking at all of the D that we talked about, and what are some of the ways in which you may be a D, even if you're not a D, as Robert was laughing and saying. And I want to challenge each of you to take a look at this and see, and really take some introspection as to where you fall on the map. And I want to thank each and every person for being here today. I want to thank you for joining me live online. And I want to let you know, there's been a request from several people over the past couple of days Since I said I was going to be doing a 30-minute podcast, they want me to expand it. So next week, look to see if I take the coaching from people that have asked to expand it. And I appreciate each of you coming in today. I want to thank those on Clubhouse that came in to listen. Al and Yolanda and Letitia and Kelly and Melvise and Dominique, four of the most powerful coaches I know. So for those of you that get a chance to go to the replay, amazing Heart of Coaching coaches that I've just had the pleasure of stepping into working with over the next several months, several years, you never know. And they are inspired by God, and they just bring kingdom coaching to a whole new level. And so thank you so much to those of you there. And Melvise, by the way, if anybody is looking for a ghostwriter, Melvise is absolutely phenomenal at it. So yes, if you're listening to this on one of my channels and you're like, who's he talking about? Have to go to Clubhouse, check it out, and listen to the replay of this show. And with that, Robert, thank you. Joey, thank you. Wade, Pedalin, known as Kingdom on here, I want to thank you all. And this room will be self-destructing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I want to thank all of you that are watching live. I appreciate you. And here we go. We're going to time it out now.
Coaching with Les has doubled my practice.
We've increased our sales by about 33%, blowing all of our goals out of the water.
In my first 6 months, I actually grew my business with his help over 500%. Literally 500%.
Les Hill is the type of person that invests back in you and back into your company. So if you're looking for a business coach with integrity, choose Les Hill.